All right. Welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Nick Borges from Seaside PD in California. He has 22 years experience on the job, and he really is an inspiration. He has such a unique story and things that he's doing organizationally. So I'm very excited to have him a part of the show. Welcome, Chief Borges. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited to talk to you. I know we talked offline a little bit, and your background is so unique and interesting and inspiring. So I would love if you could give us some background, share a little bit about your upbringing, how you got where you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a very different story than a lot of law enforcement officers have. I never wanted to be a police officer. It's nothing I was interested in. I wasn't one of those kids playing with police toys and knew I would grow up to be a police officer. It just wasn't something I was interested in. And my father and my mother and father truly, but my father has a very unique background himself because he came to this country when he was 17 years old from Portugal and had to learn English language and figure out a way here in the United States in the 70s, going to school and doing a bunch of things that were just extremely challenging. And he brought his parents here, his older sisters here, and cousins. He really was the lead at this at 17 years old. It was just pretty remarkable that he was able to do all this. And he ultimately became a firefighter and kind of encouraged my brother and I to follow his path. And that wasn't for me either. I just didn't enjoy the fire service a lot at all. But I was about 19 years old, and just a back step, one step with me is surprisingly, I really embarrassed my parents and my father in particular because for whatever reason, I took a path of delinquency and was a little criminal, I guess. I was out breaking laws as a juvenile. I was running from police. I was getting myself arrested. I spent a couple tours in juvenile detention facilities. I was on probation for a while, and about 18 years old, I really started to wake up a little bit and grow up. And I was working at a grocery store, and I was 19 years old at the time, working at a grocery store, and I was walking down this roadway in the city of Carmel, which is near where I'm at, and there was this very cliche road or tree in the middle of this roadway. And I remember just thinking, almost mocking myself, thinking, oh, do I go down this path or this path? Do I go right or left? And I didn't share this with you before, but right when I stopped and said that, there was this house with this white picket fence and this rose bushes and small yard, but a very expensive home. And it hit me really hard because in all my dad's jobs that he had, his main job being a firefighter, my dad was just a true blue workaholic. He had a gardening business. He detailed people's cars. And anything my dad could do legally for a dollar, he would do. He's still that way now, and he's in his 70s. But this is one of the houses that he would take my brother and I when he would do his landscaping side business. And I had cut the grass, trimmed the roses, raked and so forth. And it just, whatever happened to me in that moment in life, it really hit me that, I was embarrassed, to be honest with you. How did my father come from another country with all these challenges and become a firefighter with a profession that's very respected? And here I am at 19 years old, and it was a neat little grocery store, but this wasn't at all anywhere near a profession. And I stepped to the right, and I took the right road at that point on. And at that point, I knew, and this is on my lunch break, by the way, I knew at that point that I wanted to be a juvenile probation officer, and I wanted to work inside of a juvenile detention facility, the same one that I had been housed at, and help kids to not follow that pathway. And to kind of summarize the story, I didn't know this at the time, but I had to join a police academy because they're peace officers. That's something I wasn't into. I was still very distrustful of police at that time. But I did. I ended up joining a police academy in August of 2001. And everyone knows a month later what happened. In September of 2001, 9/11 happened. And I had another one of those epiphany moments where I knew I could be doing the work that I want to do. And, I like the danger and excitement of if somebody comes to harm, our country, our area, anywhere I'm responsible of, I'm running towards the danger. I want to help people. And that really shifted my whole perspective in having a whole new respect for law enforcement. and pursuing a pathway in law enforcement and ultimately getting hired in Seaside, California at the age of 21 years old. And I've worked here ever since for 22 years. So it's really neat to have a story where, I was totally against law enforcement. I was a bad kid, change that around, and then become a police officer in an area where I grew up, and to be here the entire time. And I never thought I would be a police chief. I was surprised I even got hired. Going through the background phase was a challenge, but yeah, here I am now, many years later, and trying to give back to my community and to my department.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, we talked about this before, but I think that not only is your story inspiring, I think it's a story of perseverance. And you did not share that, like, that fork in the road story with me. And as you said that, I was shaking my head because I had that exact experience myself. Different situations, obviously, but I was 19, same thing. And it was a defining moment for me too, to like wake up. I woke up on the floor, hungover, and had that moment of like, if I don't make a positive change, I'm going to end up like my parents. And that was my worst fear. And so it was that same kind of like fork in the road. Do I go this way or this way? I know if I go this way, it's not a good thing. And if we go this way, then maybe there's some hope. And so having that moment, I think that that is something that kind of sticks in your head forever because, like, thankfully, we both chose the good path or the right path to bring us where we are today. So thank you for sharing that. I also and I know this might be controversial and I want to get your insights on this, and this might be a little bit of a sidecar, but there's this expression that your past doesn't define you. And I actually kind of disagree. I think that our past really does influence the way that we view the world and the way that we learn and that we grow and how we help people in the future. And while it doesn't have to be a part of your life now, I very much do think that our past experiences really do influence how we operate today. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like because of those past experiences, now you're able to grow and to learn and to lead in maybe a different way than you would have if you hadn't been through those experiences?
Oh, 100%. And I would just say I don't even think it's controversial in my opinion. I absolutely agree and believe that what you grow up with, the experiences that you have, I'm always one that says everything happens for a reason. And then I've heard people saying these days, maybe not everything happens for a reason, but there's a lesson to learn in everything that does happen. And that's really a really positive way of looking at it as well. But I'll tell you this, if I didn't go through the experiences that I went through, I don't think I would have been a successful police officer. I don't think I would have been advancing it within the ranks. I had an experience. Now, I had a lot of police contacts as a young person. I'm talking my early teens, but I had a lot of police contacts, and I deserved a lot of police attention. But what I was learning back then that I had no idea would benefit me later in life is what the police did with that attention. And there were things that they were doing that I knew as a 14, 15-year-old kid they can't do this. They can't do the things they've done. And I can share stories and go on and on, but the things they were doing were totally excessive and beyond what the scope of their role was. Just hold me accountable. You caught me. I screwed up, and let's go from there. But the things they were doing on the side were just insane. But when I hit the streets as a police officer, two things happened for me that my past experience really, really shined for me. One was and I've never forgotten this, to treat everyone with respect, even when they're at their worst, even when they do something completely awful, they make a horrible mistake or a decision to do something deliberate to somebody else or to steal or whatever it may be. You still, as a police law enforcement professional, you still have to treat that person with respect and as a human being. And me doing that, I earned so much respect on the street as a young 21-year-old kid because I was treating people. Now I would catch them. I literally would go to very high profile at the time drug dealers. There was a lot of drug dealing going on in Seaside back then. And here's this 21-year-old kid, and I would go to their house and knock on their door and say, "Hi, I'm Officer Borges, and I know you're selling crack cocaine, and I want to help you change your life. And if you don't change your life, I'm going to arrest you. I'm going to catch you. But if you do try to change your life, I'll be by your side and I'll be a reference on the job application. I'll help you. Now I got a lot of people that completely told me to get the heck off their property, and I got an earful. But it really impacted where my name started to float around the community of this guy who's knocking on doors doing this stuff. But it was a respectful thing, and these dealers ultimately, none of them took my advice, the ones I'm referencing, and I ended up arresting them. But then I still built a relationship with them after the fact. It was a human experience after I had arrested them. I still was offering that help. I still was giving them extra food and offering them extra phone calls, even though they only had three, and all these little things that really paid off. And the other thing is just my, not that I'm, all street savvy, but I had enough run-ins. I had some experiences to where I could tell you, I could walk on somebody, I can tell right off the bat, okay, this person probably has a gun on them. And I remember a lot of my training officers, like, what makes you think that? And, look how they're holding it, look how they watch, they reached right away, or look at how his pants is sagged and whatever it may be. And then I would get guns and other things. And they thought I was like this magician. And really, it was just past experiences of things that I was around, things I engaged in, that I could see things that a person that didn't have those experiences saw. And it helped me really excel in my career. But the key part of that is, as much as the street, because a lot of cops have really good street instincts and street smarts, but then there's a lot that have the attitude that come with it. And my community is relatively small, 35,000 population, but it doesn't matter. Even if you're in a big city and you're working a certain district, people remember how you treat them, what you said. And then later on, when you're trying to solve a crime that could be a bigger crime, a homicide or a shooting or whatever it may be, they're not going to talk to you. But if you treat people well along the way, and I didn't do this just as, manipulation to benefit, it's just who I am. But I found the results were, to this day, I'll get phone calls. Hey, there was a shooting over here. Somebody needs to go over here and talk to so-and-so, or, hey, look behind the dumpster here. I think they dropped a gun here. And it's pretty remarkable. And I want to encourage other officers to have that experience. It's not weakness. It's being a human being, doing your job, doing it effectively, being a professional, and the results will come. So it's, to go back to your original question, absolutely. I didn't even know I was trained to be a cop when I was 14 and 15. When I was in juvenile hall, I remember I had a penal code book, and I was studying the penal code to know what the laws were. And, in my mind then, I'm thinking, how am I going to avoid being, meeting all these elements so I could be charged? And later on, I'm like, I'm learning these codes, so I'm charging other people with these codes now. So full circle.
No, and I think that it's a superpower in a way. I really do. I think that, like we said, your past experiences shape who you are today. And because you have seen both sides of it, now you have empathy for both sides, right? Because you can see it from two different perspectives. But then you're also able to come from a position of wanting to help people because you are in a position where you were going down a wrong path too. And having that ability to say, hey, like, I want to help you first. And then if you don't want help, then I'm going to also arrest you because that's,
Yeah.
my job and you're breaking the law. But I do think that it's powerful to have that different perspective and be able to then offer help where you can. And it sounds to me like that was your initial driving force getting into this profession. You wanted to work in a juvenile facility because you wanted to help young people who were going through a hard time. And then obviously, September 11th, and now you want to help protect your country and your community. Do you think that that has always been your driving force, your why for what you do now is to help others? Or do you have a specific why that you have kind of lived by throughout your career?
Yeah, I do. And I actually plastered it up on our window just outside of our briefing room. And that is to never miss an opportunity to positively change somebody's life. I cannot tell you one of the things, and it really ties into wellness too, but is gratitude. Every single morning, I will, whether it's through prayer or just talking to myself, every single morning, I really genuinely thank God, thank whoever your higher power is, but for me, it's God, that I am where I'm at, because to not experience the things I've experienced in my life, taking the route that I did, I would have so many regrets if I would have gone the other way. Um, Again, it was a lot of anger, it was a lot of depression, there was a lot of frustration, and that is not a path that I wanted. And the experiences that I've had now, and like I tell a lot of young people, if you can choose this path, just imagine that you can be planning a trip to go to Hawaii or go out of town or do something fun, own a jet ski or a boat or whatever it may be. So many people that I know that are struggling in the street life, they never leave Seaside. I mean, them going on vacation is maybe going to the city over from us. They don't go anywhere. This is their day in, day out. And to me, that's really sad. And to give them that opportunity. So yeah, I think just being grateful for where I'm at and thankful that I still have that ambition. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. I wish it was a smooth sailing ride along the path of trying to be better. I've made plenty of mistakes. I was a cop in my 20s and 30s, and we all make mistakes and bad decisions. But overall, it's been a path of just growing and developing. And to answer your question, I never will forget how important it is to positively change somebody's life and give them that opportunity. And I know it sounds cliche to say, "Oh, where I like helping people." I mean, I genuinely like helping people. I like to reach out to others. Our department right now is involved with a pretty high-profile case, the American Nightmare case that happened in Vallejo. That has no jurisdiction in Seaside, but just by chance, through meeting them and doing a training seminar, I became involved with them and became very involved with the case and the aftermath of the case, and new charges have been filed and all these different things. And none of that would happen if I didn't have the ambition to want to help other people. And surprisingly, just by doing the right thing and taking some initiative on things, big things will happen. You just never know what will happen if you're trying to help people. So 100% helping people is crucial.
And I think that this profession especially, there are so many people like yourself that's why they got into this career choice, was to help and to be in service of others. And so I think that that reminder of that you have that power and that influence to do that, to help people and to positively influence and change people's lives, I think is such a powerful message. And I know that, through this podcast, we've had so many conversations where we talk about the importance of connecting with that why. And it sounds to me like you wake up every day and you reconnect with that why, having gratitude for where you are and the ability to, help your community and your agency. So I think that's a super powerful message and something to remember for anyone who's listening. I know that you said when you were younger, you were angry, depression, you struggled. What are things that have helped you from a wellness perspective get through those things? And what are you currently doing to maintain your wellness in this profession?
I would say for me, without question, is exercise. Again, I'm not an NFL player or anything like that, but exercise has always been an incredible release. I used to have a punching bag when I was younger. My parents actually bought me one, and I used it like crazy. But I found me getting up early in the morning. I still do this every day. I get up super early in the morning, about 4:40 in the morning every morning, but I was doing this about 16, 17 years old as well, when I was really trying to find myself and try to navigate all these, teenage challenges I was going through. But getting up early, and I grew up in a city that neighbors us called Pacific Grove, and I'd get up really early and I'd go for a 4 or 5 mile run along the beach front. And there was just something so special and so spiritually connected for me. And I didn't even know if it was spiritual at the time, but I definitely recognize this now. But just the ocean, the morning brisk, the quietness, it really helped me gather my thoughts. And I'd be running and getting all this frustration out. And then I would exercise on top of that. I would go and exercise. And I was working at this market for a long period of time, for about 3 years. And I was doing all this before I even started my 11 a.m. I remember I worked from 11 to 8, 40 hours a week. And I'd go to the gym in Seaside after that. I go home and freshen up and then go to the gym and do it again. And it really helped me. And then it also built confidence, as you're growing up and becoming an adult, you're seeing your body change. You go, wow, I didn't realize that, I can lift this much weight or do this. And it made me feel really good and feel like I was accomplishing something. but I also noticed it was taking my mind off all the negativity. And I really am a strong, firm believer that where your mind goes, your thoughts is where things in life will happen. And bad things happen to good people all the time, but I always tell myself good things happen to good people, and good things are supposed to happen to people who are trying to do good things and doing good things. And when I focused on positive stuff, more positivity, I would see more and feel more, and more experiences would happen. But if you're down in a rut, if you're down feeling negative every day, and you're turning to alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be, um, you're going to tend to dig deeper and deeper and surround yourself with people who have the same like and the same habits. And then you feel like you have no hope. And once you lose hope and confidence, then it's just like, okay, well, this is what my pathway is, and if I'm going to be bad, I'm going to be the baddest I can be. And that's really where I found myself. And it was scary. It was really scary. And once you step away from it and you can look back or look at yourself in that sense, it's really empowering to see, wow, there's another alternative here. There's a way of being happier. So for me, exercise, I still do it today. Even, if I'm sore or tired, I still will find some form of exercising because it gives me that same rejuvenating feeling.
And I completely agree with you when you say that your environment matters and who you hang out with matters, and the way that you view the world is impacted by others. Because I experienced a similar thing growing up. It's like when you're feeling bad and you're negative, you almost want to surround yourself with those people because they don't call you out for it. It's like acceptable behavior because everybody is doing it. So it almost doesn't feel like it's wrong, even though you know that it is. And then when you do step aside and you start, surrounding yourself with more positive influences in your life, that's when you start to see that, like, oh, I have to make a change, which could be scary or uncomfortable. And it takes work. And a lot of times that discomfort, I think, is what holds people back of like, oh, well, if I just stay in this area where, my environment is supporting these bad decisions and it's more comfortable, it's less scary. I can stay in this little space. So for you, it seemed like that physical exercise really allowed you to kind of shift your mental perspective. It had a positive impact on your mental health, and it allowed you to kind of get out of that dark space and into a more positive mental frame. Does that sound about right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And not just the workout component too, but the really I call it meditation. It may just be just alone time, just time to reflect on thoughts. But that to me, the mental piece of it is almost more important than just the physical piece of it. The physical piece feels good and you can actually feel it, but the emotional piece, like I need at least one day a week, and it doesn't always work when you have kids and family and responsibilities, but one day a week to try to have some time to yourself to reflect on everything, to kind of check in with yourself. I do this, and like I said, my once a week sometimes is once a month, but I have little things that I'll do, and I'll go around the beach. Like one of my favorite things that I do, there's a couple things, but one of the favorite things that I do is I'll try to get a Sunday where my family's busy, and I will drive down to the beach. I'll park my car, and I don't even go down on the sand. I just park and I'll walk around the entire beach in the city of Carmel. And it's like a 3 mile walk. And then I end up at this restaurant and they have this awesome Sunday brunch. And I sit outside and I eat this brunch. And then I walk back to my car. And it's like a 2.5, 3 hour little experience. But the thoughts and the talking to myself that I do, and processing that I do, it really, I mean, I just feel so brand new when I get back in my car and head home. It's just incredible feeling. And I try to stay on track and do that every now and then. It doesn't always work, but when I can, it's like a recharge of the batteries. It feels so good.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you when you say that it's kind of like a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice of just being with yourself. And I think that for a lot of people, that's really scary. I have like the flip perspective of that, where like I tried not to be with myself for so long because I didn't want all of those things coming up. I wanted to keep them shoved down as far as I possibly could. Because what I shoved down there was scary, or there's trauma or whatever it was. And so often we find that people turn to escaping or numbing or alcohol or whatever, shopping, whatever addiction it is, to not be present and to get your mind more in a distracted place. And I think it's a great piece of advice to say, hey, take one day, even if it's one day a month, you can progress from there, but start somewhere and try to have moments where you can be present and mindful with yourself and work through those things rather than, reverting to the default mode of escaping and avoiding and numbing.
Right. Yeah.
What advice would you give? So if there is someone out there who's kind of like in this place where maybe they are struggling, they're feeling like the same anger or fear or stress, and they don't really have a lot of personal wellness for themselves. What advice would you give to them as like a motivation, to kind of get themselves out of that place? If there was one thing that you could say, like, would it be just one day a month and, be by yourself? Would it be run, walk? Like, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone to start on their own personal wellness?
Well, the advice I give people, and I say this all the time, it's number one, just try the practice of, I call it PMA. It's out there. I stole it somewhere, but PMA, positive mental attitude. Just try it. Even if you have to lie to yourself and mislead yourself. And the example that I use and I tell people is I say, when you wake up in the morning, but you have to really believe what you're saying to a point, even if you think like, I don't know. And you say, today's going to be a great day. Some great things are going to happen today. I just know it. And you got to say that and really just believe your words. Like, you know what? It's going to happen. Today's going to be a great day. I'm going to feel a good way, certain way, but today's going to be a great day. And you go out with that. And if you really say that, you're going to start to see things like, whoa, look what just happened. Or that person let me go at the intersection or whatever it may be. But you have to believe that, because I'm telling you, in my own life, that when I'm thinking negative, I can check myself now. I used to not even know this was occurring, but I can check myself now and stop it and redirect. And I even tell myself, okay, I'm lying to myself because I don't know. There's a lot going on here, but it's going to be all right. Things are going to be good. It's going to be a good day. The rest of this day is going to be good. The rest of the week is going to be awesome. I know it. And I might have a challenging week, but you know what? I was right. Like, a lot of good stuff happened, or I reconnected with someone I haven't talked to in a long time, or whatever it may be. So the one piece of advice is just start with your thought process. It might be hard for a person listening to say, well, I don't have time, or I'm working all the time, whatever it may be. But you can control your thoughts and your inner talk, inner voice, to say, no, today it's going to be a good day. Just to test it and do that a few times. And once it starts to work, because I'm confident it will, then just run with it. Build on it from there of the positivity. But PMA, positive mental attitude, is the place to start, in my opinion.
I love that. I think that's great. That's great advice. And I wrote that down too, because I've never heard it in acronym. You guys love your acronyms. So PMA, positive mental attitude, and like truly believe it. I love that. Thank you. So I want to shift gears a little bit. When we talked before the podcast, you are doing some really cool things organizationally with your wellness program, and it's very, out of the box thinking. And I would love if you could share some of the things that you've done organizationally, when it comes to wellness.
Absolutely. And I want to be very just honest and transparent, because I don't want to be a guest that comes on your podcast that makes it seem like we're the greatest and we're doing everything perfectly. And, we have the magic wand here. We have the same challenges that I know exist in every department in the United States. And we have a peer support team. We've established that for several years. And we send officers to training, and it's effective. It works. But at the end of the day, you have to have trust in an organization. And in any organization, I don't care how healthy it is, there's always going to be pockets of distrust in employees where people say, I'm not going to go and tell you my deepest, darkest secrets at work, or how I'm really feeling, or whatever it may be. So the peer support team, it's nice to have. I think it's important to have, but it's not the solution of wellness for our department. It's not the one thing that's saying, hey, we're perfect now, everyone's great. They check in and it's great. So we've really done some out of the box things, and I just want to share the app, and I won't say company names, but a few years back we adopted an app, and it was a wellness app, and it's a very effective, very good tool that's out there. The one I will say is one that's available and it's free. It's called Lighthouse, and anyone can download that. And essentially, what this app does is allows for an employee or a person to go on this app and find resources within a particular region. And the resources are anything you can imagine. They're there, and it'll help you find a therapist or whatever it may be, hotlines for almost any issue you could be going through. And it's an anonymous, free app. But our organization, we had one that we had funded, and it was quite expensive, annual cost. And our chief at the time, really, it was just evident to me that this was just a checkbox. This was just a presentation for city council or a post on social media. We have this wellness app we care about our employees, and the messaging behind it was just so polished and it sounded so good. Nobody was using the app. And when I reached out, when I became the acting chief a few years ago, I reached out to the company just to get some data because I was looking at the cost, and they said, well, we don't pull specific data for confidentiality purposes, but I can tell you this app is something very popular within your organization because I think it was 167 downloads of the app have occurred. And we don't have 167 employees. I think at the time we had like 40 employees here, and we had split the cost with our fire department, and they have like 30 some odd employees. So there's not 167 employees. And what he said is anytime somebody downloads the app, even if they delete it and download it again, that counts as a download. And me personally, the former chief's messaging was so fake. I don't know how else to say this. It was so fake. And the whole app, you'd log into this app and there'd be a message from the chief, and the chief would be sending this message. And in this particular case, he's down by a beach with the ocean behind him. And it was this very dramatic messaging. And it was, I'm going to take full responsibility. It was probably me that downloaded and deleted that app 167 times. I was showing everybody in my family, everyone I could show, look at this, look at this. Do you believe this? And I would delete it because I was so irritated. And then I'd go somewhere else and download it in so they could watch the messaging. So we ended up moving away from that app, but we have other things in place. But I guess my point just to that piece is there's so many things that most agencies fall in line. They hear about something, others are doing it, and we fall in line and do it. And it's a nice checkbox. But if it's not really impacting our staff, then it's just a checkbox. And people realize that. Our employees understand that this is just, the chief is trying to make him or herself look good. But we've done a few things that some are doing, which I think is effective. And one I just want to talk about is having a therapy dog. And we call our therapy dog, he's Officer Bear, we call him therapy dog in training because he came from a broken home and he picked up a few bad habits. He's scared of everything. So he's very hesitant of people. But with kids, he's like this, he's a teddy bear, literally. So we've used him on a few high profile cases. We had a fatality crash year before last, and we had him come and comfort the family. It was really effective. But what I love about Bear is he'll be in the station and he'll just kind of cruise around. Everyone has their own unique personal relationship with him. And there are some who their relationship is get him away from me. He's putting hair on my pants. But everyone kind of stops what they're doing in the moment. And it does change the dynamic. When you have this very friendly looking dog who comes around and sniffing you and wagging his tail and sitting down if you're eating, wanting some food, it really just by nature just releases stress and calms the mood. So Bear has been phenomenal, but we actually took it a little step further. And this was not by design. This wasn't us, executives sitting in a room of what can we do next to be creative. This is very organic. And our animal control, who I say this very publicly, he's a cross between Steve Irwin and Ace Ventura. This guy is incredible. He could have his own TV show with animals. He is phenomenal. And if you follow our social media, you'll see all the stuff he does. But he ended up having a call to where there was all the parrots that were being housed and really malnourished, and they were in a garage, and you should see the videos of just the rats. There was dozens and dozens of rats in this garage that had living quarters. It was awful. And our animal control officer ended up rescuing these birds. And this one particular bird, her name is Jazzy, she was not looking good. It wasn't looking good for her at all. And she was probably not going to make it, to be honest with you. So he ended up pretty much adopting her, taking her in, and he owns her now. I mean, it's his bird because that's her home. She is now part of our station. So he started to bring her a little bit to the police department to kind of show staff, like, look how far along she's coming. And we all just fell in love with her. And even for me, she was here last week. We were talking with somebody and they wanted to see her. So we brought her here last week. I'm just mesmerized by her. And she's so smart. Now she picked up some really bad habits from her past owner. So she makes some very interesting sounds and she has a bit of a bit of a potty mouth. So we're careful what we say, of course, around a police department because she'll pick up quickly. But she's like mimicked the sounds of our police emergency tones, and it's just awesome. She'll make these tones, and I posted that on our social media a while back. But not only does she really change the energy and the vibe of the staff, but we have her close to our front lobby, and people that come to the police station with frustrations and struggles, it's just like, what is that, a parrot? Why parrot? And I don't know if you've ever seen the skit with Conan O'Brien and Will Ferrell, but there's this really funny skit, and I kind of stole this from Will Ferrell or borrowed it. But he comes out to the Conan O'Brien show, and he has this similar parrot on his shoulder, but he's totally ignoring it. And when Conan starts to press him on it, he kind of tells Conan, you know, I'll talk about anything, I'll my movies, but I don't want to talk about my personal life. And he's got this parrot on his shoulder. So I have been known to walk around the police department with Jazzy on my shoulder and comment on it. I'm like, hey guys, let's just talk about work. I don't want to talk about my personal life. Kind of breaks, you know, people laugh and they're like, oh my God, what's going on here? But but yeah, Jazzy and the therapy dog have really been just real, tangible evidence of how you can change the mood and energy. And I think that contributes to wellness. And then I can talk a little bit, if you'd like, about our lobby, because I kind of referenced that when I was talking about Jazzy.
Yeah, I would love to hear about the lobby. And I just like think it's hilarious and awesome that you have Officer Bear and Jazzy, the gray African parrot,
Yep.
at your station. I think that's hilarious. And she's just cursing around town and but I agree with you that, I think there's no denying. I've been to so many different agencies or conferences that'll bring their therapy dogs in, and I think you're 100% right. Like you can't deny the impact that it has on people's moods. Like you can't be angry when you have a dog coming up to love on you. Like I just think it really just, at least in that moment, it just takes you out of that and puts you in such a mode of positivity and presence. And I agree that even the people who are the most like straight faced, look so tough, like the moment you put a dog or in your case a parrot in front of them, I'm sure it just really changes the whole mood. So I think that that's great.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know I want to talk about the lobby, but I know that when we talked beforehand, you mentioned this earlier in the podcast about the case that you became really involved in, and how that impacted, how you present your lobby and the environment at your agency. So would you be willing to kind of dive into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So, for those that aren't familiar with the case, in 2015, there was a very high profile, made international news kidnapping case that was originally called a hoax out of Vallejo, California. And at that time, I was a sergeant here in Seaside. And I'm one of those people who I'm watching Dateline 2020, 48 hours every week. I record it and watch it. I've been, being a detective was one of the funnest things I ever have done. So I'm very into a lot of these crime cases. And when this case came out, it just struck me because there was a press conference that went out, and there was things said insinuating it was a hoax. And I just know, being in law enforcement, that if we are going to come out with strong statements that we're going to have a smoking gun, and we have a hard time, even though you hear us all the time saying, we can't get too much into the investigation to compromise. When we have a smoking gun, we can't hold it. We're going to come out and say, look, the gun's still smoking. Here it is. And that didn't happen. And ultimately, in the case, it was determined by facts that it was not a hoax and that Miss Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn were in fact kidnapped. And there was a ransom case, and she was sexually assaulted multiple times. She was taken to a cabin in South Lake Tahoe. And it's just one of those cases that always really struck me. So early last year, they came out with a Netflix documentary called American Nightmare. And I was already very familiar with the case. I'd seen multiple, interviews on Dateline and a variety of other platforms. So when this documentary came up on my Netflix feed, I didn't recognize the name of it when I clicked on it. And as soon as they started talking, I went, oh, this is the case from Vallejo. And I have a 4-year-old son. I have a 16-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son. So it took me 2 weeks to watch this docuseries, 3 episodes, and that's because my son was jumping all over the place. But I got through the docuseries, and there was a few parts in there that just it looked, number one, the ocean in the background looked very similar to the area that we're in, and being a police leader now, I just, for whatever reason, I just felt compelled to reach out to them, and I ended up reaching out to them. Didn't expect a response back. It took about a week or so, and I got a response back from both Denise and Aaron. And in talking with them, I ended up having a phone conversation with Denise, and I said, hey, would you guys be willing to come speak to my department about what you went through and have us kind of learn lessons of how we can be better moving forward? And that ended up being a statewide training that we held here in Seaside last year with over 300 law enforcement officials.
Just
But
gave me chills. Sorry, that
yeah,
got me emotional. It gave me chills.
it's really like the way we talk about things happening for reasons, or how things kind of come together. But and there's a few things. So when this happened, and not to branch off too much, but the El Dorado DA, Vern Pearson, heard about what we were doing, and he came to our seminar just to listen in as a guest. And he had jurisdiction of where Denise was held captive. So we all connected and formed a group between him and Misty Caruso, who actually solved and linked the case between the suspect and we have a team now that has formed, and the case has been reopened, and a lot of things have happened since then. But to go back to the wellness piece, during this seminar, and I was listening very carefully to every word they said, both of them talked about their experience at the police station. And not a lot of people picked up on this because the story is just so it's colorful. I don't know what else to say. It's just so dramatic and tragic that you may miss when you hear the story, their experience at a police department. And it made me think, my police department, we're a small city. Our police department was built in 1954. Right now I'm sitting at City Hall because our station flooded in December, but we sit in the basement underneath. We're already in a concrete basement is our police department underneath City Hall. So you walk down some steps to get in our police station. It's the most uninviting place ever that I've ever seen. So I thought, gosh, if they're having a hard time with Vallejo Police Department, who's much bigger, they walk upstairs to get to their police station, we probably need some work. But Aaron specifically talked about just having, and he kind of said it facetiously. He said, if there was a picture on the wall, or I don't know, a water feature of some noise or something, it would have really helped with his multiple hour interview interrogation, and the more importantly, the times he was left alone in an interview room. He was not under arrest. He was left alone in an interview room, just with dead silence, white walls, typical police departments, concrete walls, blank, desk, and some awkward chairs. So it got us thinking, and my team came together, our records division team, and I said, hey, you guys, let's kind of renovate this and let's make this like a little bit more welcoming and whatnot. They went completely wild. They went from, they were coming in on their time off, and they were putting in wood paneling on the sides of our walls so it wouldn't look just all concrete walls. And then they painted, and they put flooring in. They made it 100% Zen-like. It feels like a spa. And the only things I really contributed to this is I said, I want to have like spa-like music that's on a 24-hour loop, soft playing in the back, just like you would hear if you went and sat in a lobby at a spa. Want that playing. And that alone, we got that first because we just bought it on Amazon, and very inexpensive. And immediately we would have people, and anyone listening to this that's in law enforcement can relate. When people are coming to your lobby, it's usually not because they're like, hey, just coming by to say hi. It's a problem. They're coming because there's a problem. They're frustrated. Maybe they're frustrated with an interaction they have with an officer, or they've been a victim of a crime, or whatever it may be, and they're looking for help. And we had a lot of angry people coming in, like we historically have had. And the music alone, when people would sit down, just to add to their stress, is when you say, "Hey, our officers are busy. They'll be here in a little bit," and that could be 10 minutes. That could be 45 minutes. It could be longer. But when that music was playing, you could see people's demeanor shift. And then when the officers, and I was watching this, when the officers would come, they would already be in a good playing field where it was a very welcoming environment and interaction. So we went from there. And the other thing I did was I said, in honor of Aaron and Denise's, I want a water feature in here. So we got this huge water feature that we put in our lobby it's really beautiful. And then the team went for the essential oils and for the scent, and it is really a very peaceful and welcoming. When you come into our lobby, and we'll be back open in about 3 weeks, it really will throw you off. We've had people leave and go back out to our door to look to make sure they're in the right place, and then they come back in and sit down, and it's not 100%, but it is like drastic change of where we were and the tension in that lobby and the frustration to a very calming, peaceful environment. So it helps the officers and it helps our community. And we thought about expanding it into the jail, where we're exploring on doing that. We still have jails that aren't the most comfortable, friendly places, and there's a purpose for that. But the lobby itself should be a first impression for anyone coming to interact with the police for the first time, and it's effective. I will promise you that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think, like we talked about before, it's so outside the box. I've never heard anyone ever say that they made their lobby into a Zen waterfall, essential oil space. I think that that's great. And something you said earlier, and I don't know if you really touched or if you like caught that you said this, but the whole goal of wellness is to help people. And I think when you have a program that's just check a box, you've lost sight of the goal and the mission of what needs to be done. And ultimately, it's how can you help people in a way that they need it or they're going to receive it. And it's not a one size fits all. And it's not like there's one singular thing that's going to help everyone. We know that everyone's different. And so there's a variety of different things that you can do. But to me, it sounds like your primary objective is how can we sit here and think of creative ways that maybe don't follow like the quote unquote like status quo. Like, how can we take a look at our wellness offerings? And if there is something that everyone's doing that is really helpful and people are using it, great. But if it's just something that sits there and checks a box, it's not helping anyone. And that's the mission, is to help people. So it sounds to me like every single thing that you're doing within your organization is taking a step back and saying, what is actually going to help?
Yeah, no, 100%. And like we talked about previously, is we can't really control what happens when someone goes home or they're away from work. We'd like to offer all the resources we can and give them that continued support when they leave work. But there's no guarantee. People have their own habits, their own desires, their own thoughts. They're going to do what they do for the most part. But we certainly can have some form of influence while they're at work. And that does start with some environmental things. And I have noticed in my career, and I remember I was a guy that was involved in the police union when I started. I was very much a person for many years that was kind of butting heads with administration. But working together, having good communication, and not forgetting where you come from is so critical. But I remember, and I never will forget this, is just when, and it was rare, but when we had leadership that would come in and do these little things environmentally for us, it let us know, like, oh, someone does care that our chairs and briefing are dilapidated, or someone does care that the front glass has had stains on it, or there's a crack here. It's these little things where in most apartments, if no one's complaining about it, no one cares. But to have leadership that can go around and say, well, why is this like this, and fix something or correct something or make it better, it says a lot to our people. And the other piece to that is, and we could talk about this more, but getting to know your people is so important, not just, and I'm speaking from as a chief now, I grew up in this department. I've now been here longer than everybody here, except one guy got hired with the day of. He's a sergeant. Everyone here, I've been here longer than, which is very unusual in most departments. The chief is pretty much the new person within a few years, give or take. But in my situation, I've grown up in this department. So getting to know people, and now as the chief, I know every new person that comes in pretty intimately because I know their backgrounds. I know every detail of their life because I'm reviewing these things. But I just think it's so important to be more than just the chief that walks by and says, "Hi, Jim. Hi, Jane. Good night, Jim. Good night, Jane." That to me is it's friendly and that's sweet. But trying to really get to the level of understanding people, going to briefings, listening what the issues are, going out in the field. I go out in the field all the time when I can. As much as possible, I'm out in the field and I'm hearing the calls are going to, I'm responding to help out and listen and learn. And it helps me understand when they say, "Hey, we need more of this," or "Our cars aren't doing this," to help them get what they need. But it also helps me as a leader. And again, I'm speaking to sergeants and other people in leadership roles. It also helps all of us when you see Jim or Jane and they're off. Something's not correct. That's not their normal behavior. It gives you that trigger to say, "Hey, can I check in with you? You all right? You seem a little different today," or whatever it may be. So getting to know people before something bad happens is critical. We're able to do that in a small place, but again, this can happen in big places too. Big places are broken up in precincts. This could and should happen everywhere.
100%. And I think that one thing you said earlier was building trust and how, getting buy-in, building trust. And you mentioned before that, previous leadership, you looked at something and you're like, this is fake. Like this person, like this isn't real. Like this is just scripted or whatever it was. And I think people know when you're not being authentic and when you're not taking the time. And so to me, when you're talking, it sounds like you're saying, pay attention and genuinely care and be authentic. And that's going to create a culture of wellness within your organization because not only do they know you and trust you, but you're also able to understand who they are. And then again, you can pay attention to if there's something off that you need to address. So I think the big word that kind of popped in my head when you're talking is like genuine care and authenticity. How important do you think that is, being like authentic and genuinely, showing up for your organization?
Well, I think it's really effortless. You shouldn't have to try if it's authentic. You should just, for me, I'm just myself. I am who I am. I have a hard time sitting still. I bounce around everywhere, and but I get to know people really well. Right now our station, like I said, it flooded. We're getting some repairs done. So in the meantime, we're working at different city-owned property throughout the city, and we have our records division temporarily out of one office. We have our patrol field office where they're doing a lot of their main stuff and meeting and having their equipment and gear stored at. Between my days, I'm bouncing through all these different locations and hearing and sitting down with people. I sit down with records. I'm the only person right now in our administration who does not have a designated desk. I wanted everyone to have a desk first. I have a laptop so I can sneak away if I need to, but I want everyone to have some stability in an unstable situation. And I don't have one. And I kind of like not having one because I'll go where our records are working and there's an open computer there and I'll sit down and log in and just start working from there, catch up on emails and responding to stuff and doing whatever I'm doing. And then we just get in these very human conversations like, "Oh, hey, I was just talking to our records tech. Hey, so how was your weekend? Did you watch the Super Bowl? What do you think?" Just casual conversations, and they're genuine. And people don't feel like, "Oh, I do this so frequently that people are very comfortable with me." It's not like in most places, even from my own experiences, where if a chief walks by, "Oh no, here's the chief," and "Good morning, chief." It's very comfortable and it's respectful too. It's very respectful. A lot of the new people that don't know me well that I hire, there's still a young man. He's been here for a year and he still pretends he's in the academy. I guess every time I walk by, he gets against the wall and, "Good morning, sir." Full salute. Like, man, stop! Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Seriously, but but yeah, it's super important getting to know people and being genuine and real. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be difficult. And I'll just share this one other experience. We did some team building some years back, and it was another chief. And by the way, I love being able to talk about other chiefs now that I'm a chief because I would never do it before. It's so fun now. But we did this team building, and during this team building, the instructor or the team leader was telling us, it's very important to check in on your people, especially your administration. You should have weekly check-ins and so forth. And this was another checkbox thing. So this particular chief would come to my office once a week and sit down, and then basically it was his time to just delegate a bunch of stuff. I need you to do this, and this. Okay, it's my job, no problem. And then he would say at the very end, so how's everything going? I said, I give this generic response like, yeah, everything's okay. And he would say, okay, thank you. And he'd get up and walk out. I'm like, oh my goodness. I thought that was like an icebreaker to, well, how's your workload and how's whatever it may be, a real genuine check-in. It was a checkbox. And we would meet with this team builder every month. And I wish I would have been a little bit more vocal, but I wasn't comfortable. I didn't have that level of trust. So I just went with emotions and dealt with it. But it was 100%, just like we're talking all these other things. These are check boxes, and maybe people that we're talking to are buying into it, but our staff are not buying into that. They know if something's coming from the heart or if it's totally just a PR thing, and we need to be responsible and be honest with our people. And if this is something that's just for PR, then we need to go back to our people and say, look, our city council really is pushing for this. I don't know if this is going to be effective, but because the city council and the city manager want me to go this route, we're going to explore this and see what happens. People will appreciate the honesty of it versus look at this wonderful, incredible. I mean, people don't buy that. It's fake, and we lose people along the way.
100%. And to me, it sounds like you've really created a family and a team where you guys do support each other and you have those honest conversations and you can have comfortability around each other, which I think is huge. And I think that that's funny that you're like, stop saluting me. That makes me uncomfortable. Like we're all a team here. Like, you can talk to me like a normal person. And I think that that speaks volumes too, that there isn't that like uncomfortability or that like scare factor of coming to you and having a conversation with you.
Right.
So I know that we've taken a lot of time, so I don't want to run too far over, but I would love to get your words of wisdom for leadership and or someone who's newer in this career or maybe just starting out, some words of wisdom that you would share when it comes to wellness, maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier in your career or advice you wish you would have listened to earlier in your career. What would those words of wisdom be?
Well, a couple things. Number one is culture in law enforcement and each respective police department is unique. And again, I started at 21 years old, and I'm so grateful I had a little bit of a checkered past because I'm very difficult to just influence, and I'm certainly not a follower. But in my own department early on, there was a culture in this department of how we should be policing, how do we talk to people, what consequences if somebody runs from us. It was a very different environment that I was raised in. And I would say this to people starting this job. When you come into this, you may have a certain mindset of what you expect the job to be. Maybe you've done some ride-alongs, maybe you went through the academy and you have these seasoned, in many cases, retired police officers sharing their words of wisdom. But then you get inside the organization as a full-fledged employee and you start working with staff, and the influence is thick in every department. No matter who the supervisors are, the sergeants, the lieutenants, commanders, chief, there's always a handful of informal leaders that set the tone of what the culture is. And some of them, a lot of them actually, not all of them, but a lot of them tend to be the cynical negative, and they can spew that on to others where it's negativity and it's constant complaining and what this sucks and that sucks and why do we do it this way, and everything is opposition to everything. And a lot of these people tend to be the most influential within an organization. So my advice is be an independent thinker be strong on your feet and in your mindset to know what you think is the right and wrong way to go. And don't let anyone kind of push you around, because I'll tell you, with me and everybody, but with me in particular, they tried. And I'm surprised I was ever promoted for a period of time, because I would really professionally, but strongly challenge leadership. People who were sergeants were, it's a little different today in policing, but in my era, the sergeants were the top of the food chain. We didn't even care who the chief was. The sergeants on our shift, they were the law of the land. And I would challenge them. Kind of my old adolescent days would come in. If I thought they were wrong, I'm like, you're wrong. Like, I don't agree with you. And I would do it respectfully, always. But it takes a very special person to do that, because most people will get sucked into the culture. And there's a lot of good culture, but as we know, just turn on the news any day of the week, there's a lot of bad culture in law enforcement as well. And it's okay to speak out against it. So that's one thing, is be mindful of what the culture is and how it's being set. And if we have more people that are able to shift away from that, you're going to set a positive culture within the organization that's going to outweigh the negative. And in my own experience, I've went through a time where we had maybe a handful, maybe 4 or 5 positive people, and those people were just tormented by everyone else. They were made fun of, and you name it. These were very decorated police officers. The times have shifted. Now, the ones who stand out, who are very negative and very cynical, they stand out, and they're challenged by so many more who are positive and want more positivity. So that's one piece. And then I'll go back to something I've already said, and I stand by this. If there's one thing I'd like people to hear from what I'm saying, is your mindset. I have very bad days. Believe me, there are times I say, forget this whole PMA thing, but then I reset myself. Your mindset is going to be critical. Tell yourself that things are going to be good. You're going to get through this. Feed that constantly. Put that energy out there. And I can guarantee that you'll start to see results. They may be small, but you will start to see consistent, positive results. And that's my message to people. Stay positive, avoid negative culture, stand up for what's right, and enjoy the ride.
I love it. Those are great words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing. That's it for me, but I want to give you the floor if there's anything else we miss, anything else you want to say before we sign off.
I think we got it covered.
I think we did too. That was so great. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.